Well, kia ora everyone, and welcome to Gospel Conversations for the 28th Sunday of Ordinary Time. I'm Lisa Emerson, standing in for Michael Godfrey, who I believe has finally made it back to Aotearoa. I have with me to discuss the Gospel reading today, Grace Morris, who is all the way from Indiana, Ben Truman in Christchurch, and Christine Nelson in Orewa in North Auckland. Hello, everyone. So Luke 17:11-19. As we carry on through Luke, we come to the story of the 10 lepers, one of whom, a Samaritan, comes back to say thank you. It's perhaps not as challenging as the passages we've been dealing with in the last few weeks, but there's still much to say. So Grace, have you got some background for us?
I do. Something that's helpful to know about this story is that this is one of those that only occurs in Luke. And there are several stories that do this. Luke, as a gospel, has a very specific angle. It focuses on stories about women, about outsiders, about Samaritans, about Gentiles, significantly more than you see in the other gospels. So this is an example of one of these stories. It's also interesting to note that not only is Jesus engaging with Samaritans and other people who would have been considered outsiders, but the actual setting of the story itself is on a bit of a boundary crossing. Jesus is heading back towards Jerusalem, and he is, depending on your translation, either passing through or going around parts of Samaria to get back to Galilee. And so he is in a sort of a liminal location when the story occurs. He is crossing boundaries that usually would not have been crossed. He's going through areas that would have been considered less proper. And that really sets the scene for the kinds of interactions that happen.
Great, thank you. So Ben, what's the challenge for you in this gospel reading?
A few challenges. One of the things that I'm challenged by is the fact that our 10 lepers seem to be in relationship with one another when they're, a bunch of Jews and Samaritans. And sometimes, we look to the church to be this great space for inclusion and connection and relationship. And here are people who have been excluded and yet have found a place of inclusion and community in that exclusion. And so it's sort of a challenge to the church to say sometimes we're not the best at this, and those we've excluded can be places of great community as well.
That's true. Grace, your challenge in here.
Does it occur to anybody else that Jesus comes off as a little tetchy in this story? At least at a first reading. I mean, it's not generally a mood that I look up to in someone where they, really expect somebody to come and say thank you to them after they've done a good deed. It seems an odd thing for Jesus to be getting hung up about, like, oh, did only one person say thank you? And I do have some thoughts on what's actually going on here. I'll save that for my so what. But I think that if you read this and you felt maybe like that was a little bit uncalled for, I think that's an acceptable challenge.
I think so too. And the fact that he says, and only this foreigner.
Right?
Yes. Christine, for you, the challenge.
My challenge is actually a challenge to myself and to everyone else is how do we actually respond to God's bounty? 10 people received God's healing. Only one turned back. And am I going to actually be that one? Do I just go, oh, that was nice, thanks, Jesus, and go on my way? Or it's interesting looking at the 4 verbs. He saw that he was healed. He turned around, and I've forgotten what they all were, but there's so much activity, there's so much going on. And it finishes with him falling on his knees at Jesus's feet. And how often is that our response to God's bounty? How often do we take God's love for granted?
So from the challenges to good news, Grace, I'm going back to you. What's the good news here?
My good news is the same that it almost always is with these stories. Every story where Jesus crosses a boundary and cares for someone unexpected is good news for me. Every time.
Mhm. Absolutely. Christine, your good news.
Well, as you said earlier, Grace, this whole story happens in a liminal space, in those one of those veranda spaces, which are so often the places where we do find God, in most unexpected places. And I think it's good news that it's when we're at our worst, when we're at our most vulnerable, feel most like outsiders. But God's there. That is good news.
Ben, for you, good news.
Similar to both of those. So it is the boundless and the boundary breaking love of God. The fact that Jesus chooses to engage with these lepers who the rules say don't engage with. That shows that the love of God. The fact that he showers that love and that healing on all 10, despite being one of them being a foreigner, worse than a foreigner, a Samaritan. God isn't picky. Jesus isn't picky in who he chooses to bless here. He heals all of them. And then also the 9 who are seemingly ungrateful, don't have their healing revoked, which I imagine if this was written in a sort of a Greek god style or something like that, you can imagine the Greek gods being, well, there are 9 that didn't turn back and give me their due thanks. Well, what's going to happen to them? But Jesus seems to be a little saddened, a little surprised, but he nevertheless gives them the healing that they have asked for. It is the boundless and the boundary breaking love of God.
For sure. Right, so in any good message, there's always a twist or turn or an application, a so what. So Christine, we're going to you this time. What's the so what?
I think it's Jesus's final words to the leper. It's all this wonderful stuff. You've been brought back, you've fallen on your knees, you've praised God. And Jesus says, all this has brought you back into relationship. It's made you whole. Now get up and go. And that's the kind of, oh, I wasn't expecting that. God always sends us out as a response to God's love. And that's not always comfortable, but we need to hear it.
Definitely. Ben, what was your so what?
Again, a few of them. One is, as is often the case, a reminder to pay attention to my prayer and to make sure that it isn't entirely petition, but there's a bit of praise in there as well. To go through old journals and to see where Jesus has answered the prayers that I have been praying and to give thanks. So a reminder to myself to be more grateful for answered prayer and to balance my prayers. The second one, I think, is that differentiation that happens between being made clean and being made well. There is Jesus is always on the invitation. There's always something deeper and fuller and more in the gifts that God gives. And so a reminder to myself, not just to be satisfied with the initial thought that this has been cured or this has been changed. Is there an invitation here for a deeper change, for a greater healing, for a more fuller life? So that expectation to go deeper with God in this passage.
And Grace, you have the final word. What's your so what?
Well, I said I was working on something earlier. It's this question of gratitude, if as others have said, the healing wasn't contingent on being grateful, the other 9 didn't have their healing revoked. And if in fact it is not really in Jesus's nature to get hung up on little things like whether or not someone said thank you, then why does he care? And I think similar to what Ben was saying, the answer is that I think gratitude has a kind of sacramental power to it, that it is behavior that brings us in alignment with Christ. And it has the power to bring us in relationship with Christ, which is really what happened there, right? One man came back, and in saying thank you, he forged a relational bond with Christ that the others would never get the chance to do. So my so what is being grateful isn't just a thing that we check off the list. It's something that changes us into the kind of people that we want to be in Christ.
That pulls it together so well. One of the things that struck me in the passage was that initially they were standing at a distance, but this one now is kneeling at Jesus' feet, as you say, in relationship. So I guess the great thing to take away and think about this week is this whole idea of Thanksgiving and getting closer into that sacramental relationship with Jesus. So thank you to Christine and Ben and Grace for sharing with us. And thank you to you for joining us too. God bless you all.